And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 728. Continuing our team by team previews to get you ready for the 2025 fantasy baseball season. We head to the Northeast to Washington, to the Washington Nationals, a fun young ball club. In order to help me preview this team, you can find this lovely lady's work over on fantrax.com. And you can find her on Twitter at LK Auerbach. Lauren Auerbach, how we doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Bubba. Thank you for having me on. It's good to see you. It's good to talk to you, and I am excited. I am stoked to talk about these Washington Nationals.
Yep.
I can't wait.
Yep, it's gonna be awesome. It's fun to get to do this. You know, we get to see each other in Arizona, to get to do this show, so it's fun to kind of catch up as we get ready for the baseball season here.
Yep.
Before we get into the preview of the team, I ask every guest, what were your thoughts on the 2024 season? Which, each year we've done this show, it's been a slight improvement.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, wins wise, it was kind of back is the same. We were back to back 71 win season. But I think in terms of a fan, I think 2024 was good. Personally, I kind of walked away from the kind of whole season feeling hopeful. It was kind of like the first time you saw kind of a glimpse as to where this team can be and what it can look like offensively. Because we've had a couple of lean years with being in rebuild mode, and so it was fun to see. It's like you saw like players like Luis Garcia and Jacob Young for a full season, and you saw glimpses of Dylan Cruz and James Wood at the end of the season. So it definitely left me hopeful, and I think it's a nice preview of things to come.
I agree, completely agree. And let's get into this preview because lots of optimism for real baseball and fantasy with the Washington Nationals. We'll kick it off with, some may say a knucklehead. I call it, what was I doing when I was 24 years old? So I can't judge the kid. CJ Abrams, given I wasn't getting paid $1 million to show up to work, difference. But CJ Abrams, this season cut short last year due to a gambling late night fun in Wrigley, which if you've ever been to Wrigley, and we've all had fun in Wrigley. So again, I can't judge the kid, but very, very productive ball player. Power, speed continues to get better and better. Still had a 2031 season, Lauren. ADP is around 50 over the last 11 drafts. How are we feeling on him? Because I got my thoughts, but I obviously want yours first.
Yeah, you kind of touch on a lot of this stuff. I'm still in on CJ Abrams. You're still looking at a back-to-back kind of, 30 plus home run. I'm sorry, 30 plus steal season. And, on the surface stats, the stuff for CJ Abrams in his sophomore season looks kind of similar to like his rookie season. He actually did make some gains on the power front a little bit. But yes, you kind of touch upon it. He ended the season kind of on a sour note. On the field, he had kind of a second half slump. He had a 536 OPS, and power wise, he only hit 5 of 20 home runs in the second half. And off the field, as you mentioned, he stayed up late. I think he stayed up overnight, like the night before a day game, and that was just is a boneheaded move, and he got disciplined for it. He got demoted. I think heading into this season, I've seen people kind of chitter chattering like, oh, does CJ Abrams have a short leash? This year, I don't buy into that. The Nationals were very clear about that this was a demotion based off of, a disciplinary action versus, had, it didn't have anything to do with production. Sorry, I got tongue tied there. Yeah, so I'm not terribly worried with Abrams. I think that this is an okay spot where he's going. I think if you believed in CJ Abrams, in seasons past, you shouldn't be concerned about him. He's leading off for an improved team. He should be giving you over kind of 600 plate appearances. And unless, he makes more boneheaded decisions off the field or is a distraction in the clubhouse, which I guess is possible, then you could kind of see that stuff kind of get cut back. But I think it's like you said, I agree with you. I think it's kind of a boneheaded decision. He's 23 years old. He wasn't kind of doing well in his day job playing for a losing team. And I think he kind of gave up and made a dumb decision. So.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm still all in. ADP around 50. It's like at that point of the draft, a lot of the elite shortstops are gone. You're debating between Corey Seager, Neil Cruz, and CJ Abrams. I'll take CJ Abrams in that group because I think he still is better than all of them. So I wanted to hear your opinion first. I've talked about it on many shows. Like, I'll take whatever dip they're giving us because people think he's being a bonehead. Like I emphasize, when I was 24, I was a senior in college. I know exactly the things I was doing. If I had money, and I'd been to Wrigley the year after I graduated college, I know what I was doing there. So
Yeah.
I get it. You know, there are rules when you're a professional athlete you probably should follow and maybe come back in the off season. But yeah, not everybody's polished at 24 is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
All right, and there's a lot of young players on this team too, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But Luis Garcia Jr. is who I want to hit up next, and this is a guy that has always shown like the batting average skills throughout the minor. But last year we saw the power and speed just erupt in his age 24 season. Again, common theme we'll have young ball player. Luis Garcia Jr. has an ADP of around 118 over the last 10 drafts right now, seventh second baseman off the board. How are we feeling about Garcia entering 2025?
I'm feeling good, Bubba. I think that this is another, young player. He kind of had a breakout season last year, especially kind of in the power department. And, you touched on it. He finished, with 18 home runs, 22 stolen bases, a 282 batting average, and a 111 WRC plus across 140 games. So, and he was fairly consistent throughout the season. He doesn't really walk a lot, and he, a 35.7% chase rate. That's not ideal. But like I said, overall, he was fairly consistent throughout this entire season, which is something that you want to see. I think that some kind of scuttlebutt in the offseason is, well, with the signing of, Ahmed Rosario, is he going to lose some playing time? Is this going to fall? Is Luis Garcia Jr. going to fall into a strong side platoon role? I don't buy that. I think that, yes, Garcia was, kind of sitting against some lefties last season, but he also at the end of the season, he was playing more against them. And I think they want him on the field. And I think you also saw this when they were pursuing Gleyber Torres. The Nationals wanted Gleyber Torres, but only if he would play third base. I think that they wanted to keep Garcia at the keystone position. They want to give him playing time. Sure, he may sit sometimes against lefties, but I'm still feeling good about Garcia. I guess one thing I would bring up is I kind of want to see where he ends up in this batting order. According to Roster Resource, he's penciled in right now at the 6th spot. And, Roster Resource, this isn't like a concrete lineup by any means, but during spring training, I kind of want to see these lineups that Davey Martinez is throwing out because last season, Garcia primarily hit 5th or he batted cleanup. And I think it's a fair point to make that if you're paying a top 120, draft pick for someone who may sit sometimes against lefties and now maybe a little bit, lower in the batting order, like right out of the gate, you're losing some volume there. And I can see if people are like, well, I don't like that, so I think that that's something that I'm just going to look for. It's not a capital C concern for me, but it's something that I'm definitely kind of paying attention to. But I really like Garcia, kind of doing some position previews earlier in the season, at Fantrax. I looked at him and I noticed that a note that I made next to his name was Altuve Light. And I think that that may be a little strong for some people, but this is a guy who he's turning 25 this season. And there's a lot of similar kind of skill sets with Altuve here.
100%. I'm with you. Like it's a 2020 profile potentially, still so young. Like the power speed explosion is probably what keeps people like, wow, is this like really legit? Which again, at 24, I think you might see. We talked about CJ Abrams in the same conversation like 2 years ago,
right?
And we've seen that develop. Obviously, not everyone's created equal, but I'm with you on him. I was just looking at my player shares. Yes, don't judge me, but I've completed 11 drafts so far on the NFBC. And my most rostered second baseman is Luis Garcia.
Yeah.
I have him in 4 of 11, but it's almost 50% we're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
I do like him a lot, especially at that ADP. Like I'm playing on the upside card with him.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is the batting average or batting position, like you said, in the lineup. But that's also a testament to how good this team is now.
Yeah, that's true.
A couple years ago, he wouldn't be there, so batting 6 still might not crush him in this lineup. There might be a lot to like, and I'm also glad you hit on the Rosario thing because I've been with you. I'm like, they didn't sign him to take their young stud second baseman's playing time. If anything, it's third base, platoon in the outfield. Like he can just revolve. Like, okay, Garcia needs a day off. Sure, there goes Ahmed Rosario or someone gets hurt, but I did not ever once think about that. So I'm glad. And then the Torres thing I didn't even know about. So that's good to know. All right, Dylan Cruz. big time prospect, lots of buzz. I don't know what to do with him because it was a short sample that was good and bad. Like we saw lots of good, but obviously first time getting adjusted things. Minor league numbers have been amazing. He's going to be 23 years old this year. ADP is 130. So if you want him, you got to pay for him in the outfield. How are we feeling on Dylan Cruz?
Again, I'm gonna, I like Dylan Cruz. This is gonna happen for like a lot of these players, up and down this lineup, Bubba. But I like Dylan Cruz. We caught a glimpse of him at the tail end of last season. He played 31 games. He hit 3 home runs, 12 stolen bases, and a 218 batting average. But that came with a 253 expected batting average. So, he has plate skills to kind of, hit above that. He's kind of like a CJ Abrams light. I think he's like a 15-30, kind of power speed combo guy. And I think one thing to note about Dylan Cruz is that he kind of flew through the minors. He rose really quickly. He went from AA to the majors in 100 games. And what's most notable, I think, with his time in the minors, is that at each kind of stop, at each new level, Dylan Cruz, lowered his K rate, and he didn't even have like a high strikeout rate to begin with. But that's something that you really ideally you want to see. At least players hold their own. Or this is great that I think that he's done even better. And like I said, it was a small sample size, but 31 games. He had a 19.7% strikeout rate with the Nationals. That should regress a little bit, but the skills are there for him to have. I think to succeed and be productive. I think that overall, Cruz is a contact hitter. He's got solid plate skills. He's going to be hitting at the top of this lineup. And I really like the kind of table setting tandem here with CJ Abrams, Dylan Cruz at the top of this order. Because I think that, a lot of the projection systems for Cruz on the speed side of things, they have him at 25 to 28 stolen bases. I wouldn't be surprised if I would take the over on that. I think that this is a guy, he's got 93rd percentile speed, and he attempted 15 bases in these 31 games where he was up last year. He was successful in 12 of them. But this is a team, I talked about it last season, where there's not a lot of power on this team. There's no kind of 30 home run bat. And so the Nationals are going to manufacture runs via the base paths. And I think if Cruz gets on base, he's going to run. And what'd you say? I think his ADP is around,
He's like 130-ish.
Yeah. So I think that's fair. I think I'm more confident, like I said, because of those plate skills, that I think that he can kind of maintain his own, because there is a concern, like, how are some of these guys going to hold up for a whole season? But you can't really ask for anything more than kind of what he has right now, skills wise.
Yeah, I was kind of off of Cruz just because I'm bad with prospects in general. Like, there's only a couple I'll get behind. Then I had like James Anderson on last week, and he kind of talked about him a bit. Now you've talked about him in kind of the same vein that James is talking about, and at least it opens my eyes to not just passing over him in drafts. And it's interesting, like he's going around 130, going at 120 of Christian Yelich, who kind of feels like it's just an old Dylan Cruz, maybe.
Yeah.
But then right next to Cruz, literally 0.1 ADP points behind him, is Pete Crow Armstrong, who a lot of people have similar thoughts about compared to Cruz. I think Cruz is better, but it's a fascinating little pocket of ADP there.
Yeah, I have seen him also like going above, say, someone like oh wait, no, never mind. I'm confusing him with James Wood. No, I think I like where Cruz is going. I think there's, if you're going to sleep on that kind of like, well, what if, or you're going to be kind of fooled by that low batting average, I think that, kind of digging a little deeper, he's got the skills to succeed.
I'm with you. All right. I'll try not to mention the age over and over, but I've been wrote this down for fun. So Abrams is 25 this year, Garcia 24, Cruz is 23, James Wood, who's next on, is 22. So this is ridiculous. At least they can all legally drink, unlike Trio last year. But James Wood is coming off a rookie season where it's technically, he might still have rookie eligibility. Played in 79 games. Probably not. 9 homers, 14 steals, 264 average. But again, if you like him, a trend with these guys, you got to pay for him.
Yep.
ADP is around 55 over the last 10 drafts. And I've seen people all over the board on James Wood. Like, he's the next best thing. He's going to be good. Like, there's a lot of this and that, but he's got to kind of be closer to the next big thing at this ADP. So how do you feel on James Wood? Probably your third or fourth hitter in the lineup.
Yeah, I was surprised that he was going so high. I think it's fine, right now, kind of like you said, he's kind of, in that kind of mid 50s. He's the 17th outfielder off the board last time I checked. So yes, you do have to pay a price for him. I think that of these kind of young guys that we've been talking about, this is the player that has kind of the most oomph kind of in the power department. Last season, he had a 781 OPS, but he had a 52% hard hit rate, a 10.6% barrel rate. So, there's a lot of, he's making a lot of, quality contact there. Woods is. He doesn't like elevate the ball, probably as much as he could right now, that because he also had a 55.6% ground ball rate. But like you mentioned, like he is a young guy. He's a 22-year-old. I think he can grow, into um, you know, grow into like a very nice power profile. I think for 2025, I think you can think of Wood as a 2020 guy with a plus batting average. And I think the only looking kind of at his ADP and some of the guys going around him, I think the only player, like he's going above Teoscar Hernandez, which I feel
That's
um,
tough.
I don't agree with
Hmm.
that. But some of these other guys, I'm fine taking Wood above that, but not Teoscar Hernandez. But yeah, so I guess that's in terms of ADP, kind of my
Yep.
comfortability with it.
Yeah, that's why I don't think any James Wood right now, because either at that point in the draft, I'm probably taking my first pitcher. Like it's always that dilemma.
Hmm.
It's nothing personal against the player. Like I do like him, but eventually got to fill out the team when
Right.
you draft these things. And like you mentioned, Teoscar, a guy that comes to mind, I think is going actually a little early. I got it in front of me. Let me check.
Yeah.
Um, like a similar comp, and he's going 15 picks later is like a
Yeah.
Lawrence Butler. Um, there's those kind of situations that you have to decipher throughout your
Yep.
draft.
Yep.
All right, Kyber Ruiz hitting the catchers here because that's what we do on Bench with Bubba.
Hmm.
Kyber Ruiz, I like this guy a ton. Obviously, had that nasty virus last year that derailed things, but ADP of 200, Lauren. What are our thoughts on Kyber?
I feel like he's always like around this. He's always like the 14th or 15th catcher off the board.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that I like you. I'm also a big fan of Ruiz. Um, you mentioned kind of that him getting like a virus or whatever last season. And that's really kind of what knocked his season. You kind of look at his first half versus second half numbers, and this wasn't just kind of like your everyday kind of flu that Ruiz had. He lost like 20 pounds, and JD Martinez talked about this, saying that Ruiz had kind of ramped up during spring training, and then right out of the gate, he gets this virus, loses 20 pounds, and then has to, he's on the IL for like 2 weeks, and then has to try and ramp up during the early part of the season. So, like I said, you kind of see that play out in his numbers. And in that second half, you start to see his power kind of move a little bit back up. 9 of his 13 home runs were hit in that second half. And, you saw his batting average go up. He slashed 277, 303, 398, numbers that are on par with his career norms. And that slash line, I should say, is in his final 22 games. So I like Ruiz. He's one of the league's best contact hitters. He should rebound this season. I think you can expect, I don't know, mid to high teens power, a return to 250 plus batting average. And, Bubba, I think one of the things that's also a little, it doesn't like seem like much, but he did steal 3 bases last season. And again, this is a team that led the league in steals. And I think even like on a profile with, like Ruiz's, playing at the catcher position, if you add 1 or 2 more steals to that, that's also really nice. Because if you're looking at, say, like a 15 to 18 home run hitter with a plus batting average, maybe 5 steals, 4 or 5 steals, like that's nice relative to the position. And I really like Ruiz. I don't have a problem. I think he's a top tier second catcher in 2 catcher leagues. But if you're like in a mono league, and even in a 12 team mono league, I don't have a problem if you like wait on the position and were to grab Ruiz kind of at the tail end and like roll with him. I don't have a problem with that, because I think that he'll actually finish like a spot or 2 higher than where he's going in drafts.
100%. He's one of my favorite catcher twos. Like I literally, if I don't take an early second catcher, which one time I will do, I make a point to maybe draft him around earlier to make sure I
Mhm,
get him. I want him as my catcher too.
mhm.
For that batting average, I think he returns to like everything you said. Like I think he returns back the power 15 plus homers. Most of the catchers back there don't get. More importantly, he's going to play a ton. It's that volume we talk about that he's going to get top end catcher volume. The production's obviously not going to be quite the same, but it'll accumulate in a big way. So I love Kybert.
Yeah.
I think the
Plus the
discounts
improved
pretty
lineup,
nice.
he could
Oh,
have,
bingo.
bump
Yeah.
in his counting stats. So
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. And you mentioned that I meant to talk about it like 3 players ago. I wrote it down. You're talking about all these steals, and like the Nats run so much. Like you, cause when you said Cruz had 12 steals and 15 attempts in what 30 games or whatever it was,
mhm,
these
mhm.
dudes run wild.
Once they
So
get on, that's what they're going to do,
yes,
and there's no reason that that's going to stop this season. So, um, like I said, it's weird. Like they don't have power bats, but they've got a lot of these like power speed blending, like 20,
mhm,
25, maybe,
yep,
power guys. And they're just like, once they're on those bases, they go.
it's beautiful. All right, new first baseman Nathaniel Lowe joins the team, and I like this for this team. Like he's going to be a guy that good OBP skills. He might even run into 5 or 6 steals. He's done it once in his career. Mid-teens homer guy again, maybe more. Who knows? But ADP's 256. Where are we sitting on Nathaniel Lowe?
I like Nathaniel Lowe. The Nationals brought him in. I love this move, like in a real life perspective, because I think that he brings like a nice veteran presence, like both he and Josh Bell, who we'll talk about later. It's like
Mhm.
these, I think, really two good kind of real life moves for this team, because this is such a young roster. But I really like Nathaniel Lowe just in general. He's kind of a profile of a player that I like in fantasy that is kind of like one of those boring players. He's like not going to give you like really a ton in steals, but like you said, maybe he will, get sprinkle in a few this season being on the Nationals. But he's just like one of those guys with kind of mid to high teens power. He has excellent plate skills. He gets on base. He has that high batting average. If he's sitting at 4, where he's kind of penciled in, at roster resource right now, there's like a ton of like RBI, kind of opportunity here. And so I think if you waited kind of on first base, it's not like a move like ideally you want, like I think, Nate Lowe as your corner infielder, but if he's like your first baseman, like I don't think that's really going to kill you.
Mhm.
Just because I think that you've got, like I said, he's kind of contributing to all of these other categories. So I like him. He's boring. He's consistent. He's also durable. He's played
Oh,
157
good point.
plus games in 3 of the last 4 seasons. So he can really volume his way into kind of fantasy goodness here. So I kind of view, Nate Lowe as kind of the steady Eddie in this Nationals lineup. And I think that he can thrive here.
I'm with you. I think he can thrive quite a bit here. The power is what it is, but the rest of it could take a boost with this
Hmm.
team. And like I said earlier, like there's a world where he runs back into 5 to 10 steals. He stole 8 before. Like the way this team plays, that could be a nice boost at his ADP. I just wrote something on the Patreon for Bubba and the Bloom, and he's in like this glob of late guys. I'm like, I'm cool with any of them as a corner infielder, or if you say screw it, I'm punting the position. You can live with them and be
Hmm.
just fine.
Yeah.
Another one of those guys I do like is Josh Bell, and I really would love to know why he's always on the move. There's got to be something, I don't know, but the
Yeah.
Nats brought him back, so it
Yep.
can't be that bad. Like it's
Hmm.
got to be something though, because if you just look at his player page, the dude just keeps hitting nearly 20 plus home runs every year. It's like 250 plus. It's a great profile. It
Yeah.
really is. And his ADP is 330. I got a lot of Josh Bell already because I'm baffled. What am I missing? I don't know, but what are your thoughts on Josh Bell?
Yeah, it is kind of weird. It's like, I think he's played like for like 4 different teams in like a 2.5 year span or something. But
Lauren, he's been traded each of the last 3 seasons.
it's like it's wild. I don't know what it is. I will say, like I did with Lowe, I think that this is a good move for the Nationals. I think this is a good landing spot for Bell. Like you said, the Nationals brought him back. He played for Washington in 2021 and part of 2022, where he had like some of his best
Mhm.
production in the past, couple seasons. So I don't know whether it's kind of like a ballpark thing or it's just a comfortability thing, but he has previously played here and he's played well here. So yeah, Bell is slated to be kind of the Nationals kind of everyday DH. I think at this point, we don't need to get too much into kind of his fantasy profile because we kind of know what he is, which is kind of like this streaky 20 home run player who, like Lowe, is very durable. He's basically, racked up 600 plus plate appearances, I think in all but like 2 seasons of his career. So this is a guy, again, who's going to get volume out of the DH spot. And I think there's a lot of similarity between him and Lowe. And I think it's really crazy that he's going as like the 31st baseman off the board. Like that's insane. And that is value to be had. And like I don't know why that is, but I think that's a big. I think Josh Bell is a really big buying opportunity right now in drafts.
Yeah, when the Nationals signed him to that 1 year, very, very, very affordable deal, as a Giants fan, I was not happy because Lamont Wade Jr. is not the answer. So I was like, we couldn't have done that. So yes, congratulations on another great kid. Jose Tena. This is one that kind of burst on last year. We saw some really good upside there. He got traded from Cleveland in that deal. So there was a lot of optimism and hype through his minor league numbers. You probably know much more from listening to it. So I'll stop at that. But 23 years old, going to be 24 this year, projected to start at third base. ADP is close to 400 right now. How are we feeling on Tena?
Yeah, Jose Tena, I think that third base was really a big problem for the Nationals last year. Like they got very little production. Surprisingly, the Nick Senzel experience didn't work, right? Like it was shock. So they really struggled at this position. I think whether it's Jose Tena, I think the Nationals will throw out Jose Tena as the everyday third baseman. Although it's worth noting that Davey Martinez has said that he's not guaranteed that spot and that they don't know exactly where he'll play. Now he came up, Tena came up as part of from Cleveland as part of the Lane Thomas deal last season, and the Nationals kind of almost immediately kind of threw him into major league games. And he's got a little bit, nice blend of power and speed, kind of like 15-15 type. And despite Davey Martinez's like, we're not really sure where we're going to put Tena, I don't know why it wouldn't be third base. I don't know if he's just kind of saying that, but I think that Tena starts at third base. I think they have a nice backup plan if for whatever reason Tena doesn't work out or he can't hold his own at the plate. That's where I think that you see Ahmed Rosario step in and get like the bulk of his kind of playing time. Rosario, like you said, Bubba, like he's just going to fill in kind of anywhere. He can do that. But if you had to make bets on like where he's, where he's going to get like the bulk of his playing time, I think it could be third base. But I think the Nationals are in a really good kind of situation right now because I think they'll throw Tena out there, see what they have. If it doesn't work, they'll have Rosario there because really the Nationals are just kind of biding their time and waiting for Brady House to come up for third base. So all of this to say is I think that Tena's fine. I think he's a nice deep league play because I think that he's going to be getting that kind of most likely that kind of everyday volume unless he can't kind of hang at the majors.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. At ADP at 400, why not take a stab in a deeper format? It's because he's got that speed for sure, a little bit of power. So yeah, I'm with you on him. That's where and you said that's where I think Rosario fits in when he becomes a factor. All right, Jacob Young, if you want a rabbit, we got your guy. He looks to be the starting center fielder for the Nationals. ADP is around 300 for Jacob Young. Are you interested fantasy-wise on Jacob Young?
Yeah, I think if you really miss out on speed, I mean, you can think of Jacob Young. I mean, he's the rabbit on a team that likes to run. He led the National Leagues, or I'm sorry, the Nationals in steals last season. He was 33 on 43 attempts last year. So he ran a lot, across 150 games. That speed plays well in center field. He's really good. He's a really good kind of defensive piece. So he's going to be playing every day. He's a rabbit, but he also, I think it's worth noting that he doesn't kind of take away in, kind of batting average like, a lot of run guys do. He had a 256 batting average across the season last year. And I didn't realize this, but he came in just behind, CJ Abrams in runs scored with 75, despite kind of hitting out of the 9 spot primarily last season. So I like Jacob Young. I'm doing a piece like in Fantrax shortly about cheap speed, and Jacob Young is going to be profiled. I think that, like you said, he's kind of going around pick 300, and I think that if you are light on speed, he is a really nice pickup. He kind of reminds me as a similar profile, former nationals, Victor Robles, who's going 100 spots higher than Young. Now Robles is probably going to be leading off, so there's a difference there in terms of volume, but more or less, these are kind of two of the similar guys, and I really like Young at that kind of 300 ADP.
Yep, I'm fully on board with you on that as well. Anybody else worth discussing? Like we've mentioned that Medrosario's ADP's 545. You got a few more guys on the bench. Any other bench bats? I think we it feels like the youth is going to get all the chance they can to run.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. No, there's no one I think we really need to be discussing further.
All right, let's head to the mound here, where there's a pitcher we've kind of gushed over for multiple years now, and he keeps taking the baby steps into hopefully becoming the ace as we go here. That's Mackenzie Gore, who upped his innings to 166 last year, which pretty much to me says it's go time. Before I say any more, what's your thoughts on Gore, who's got an ADP of around 195 right now?
I think that's I think that's a fair price. I tend to be still more of, I know that Mackenzie Gore kind of gives fantasy managers like a headache because you kind of always see flashes, right, of like his potential, but he has never kind of put it all together. But like you said, I'm fine with him at this price. I think I can totally see some fantasy managers being kind of out of it just because of his lack of consistency. But 2024 was a really good growth year for Gore. One thing that he had to kind of cut down on was long balls. He got like plagued in 2023 with home runs, and so he improved that. He improved his home run per nine from 1.78 in 2023 to 0.81 in 2024, and that then contributed to a career best 3.90 ERA, which is backed up by xFIP and Sierra. So that's, I think, good. And like you said, he's kind of made these baby steps year after year after year. And I think that's also important to point out because, yes, he still struggles with kind of control and versus lefties, but it's just as important. And I don't want to, kind of like sweep that under the rug. But it's also important to note that he has made these kind of baby steps year after year after year. He's improved his walk per nine every year. His velocity has gone up every year. His swinging strike rate has improved every year. So that's worth mentioning, I think. And I think that maybe you started to see some of that come together because in the final 7 starts of the season, Gore had a 28.1 strikeout rate. He had a 21.3 strikeout minus walk rate across those final 40.2 innings. And he finished the season with a 1.55 ERA that came with a 3.29 xFIP, but also a 0.91 whip. So to me, like that signals maybe he's kind of figuring some things out and those improvements. Maybe you'll start to see that kind of more on a greater level. So I do like him kind of at that kind of just inside the, top 200 you were saying.
Yeah.
I'm still in on Gore. There's still improvements, but he's shown that he can improve in certain aspects of his profile. So I don't know. I think I'm a little bit homery here with Gore, but I do like him. I'm still in on him.
Oh, I love Mackenzie Gore. I love the price tag. I've always thought he had the upside of it's just a matter of walks and home runs. Like I know it sounds so simple, but he has what you mentioned, especially towards the end, he has shown the improvements year to year as he's getting older. I'm optimistic. Well, it's eventually going to click like a Robbie Ray type thing. That's my comp I made for a couple of years with him, and it's going to be glorious whenever it does happen. Yeah. Now things get a little murky in the Washington rotation. Like you said, the hitting, awesome. Pitching, we'll see. We'll start with Jake Irvin coming off a year where we did throw 187 innings, which a young team like the Nats need. They need a guy to do that. ADP's 430. Where do we sit on Irvin?
Mm-hmm. I think that's fine. I didn't realize I was surprised when I was looking at Jake Irvin. I had no idea that he pitched 187 innings. Yep. That's wild. That was like good for 11th best last season. Now, those weren't remarkable innings by any means. He kind of had like a decent first half and then kind of like plateaued out and in that second half. But I will give credit. Jake Irvin he did improve his his walk rate last season, which I think contributed to him kind of, uh, getting a bunch of these innings last year. He cut his his walk rate from 10.2 in 2023 to 6.8 last season. So I think that played a lot of kind of, uh, his success last season. But essentially, Jake Irvin, he's not a strikeout per nine guy, but he's going to volume like he's all about volume, right? This is like his biggest kind of fantasy asset, I think. Um, and so he's going to volume his way into strikeouts like he did last season. He had 156 last season, which, is nothing to sneeze at. And so I think that, if his gains stick kind of in the walk department, he's also going to give you a pretty good whip. I think his ERA will be kind of bloated, like 425 to 450. But like I said, he plays really well in certain parts of the fantasy baseball world, kind of primarily deep leagues, minor leagues. I think he could be beneficial in points leagues as well. I think in shallow leagues, you don't really need to be concerned about Jake Irvin. And I think in 15 teamers, he's like a streamer, or a bench bat, or a bench arm. So he's fine. Like he's fine. He's like a middling pitcher who will chew through innings. That was a long way of saying that. So yeah.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I don't know how to describe him either, so it's okay. Another young arm here. You got Mitchell Parker, who kind of jumped onto the scene last year in his MLB debut, managed 29 starts, 151 innings. And overall, I would say decent, great first campaign. ADP sitting around 470. Where are we sitting on Mitchell Parker?
Yeah, I honestly, I kind of view him very similarly to Jake Irvin. He came up, he replaced Josiah Gray essentially right out of the gate last season, and he came out hot, early on in the season, but then cooled off. And like I said, he's similar to Irvin in that I think he's not a strikeout per inning guy, but he was able to kind of net 151 innings last season. And I think he's just fine. There's one thing that kind of stands out in kind of his profiles, there was a pretty big gap between his 20.6% strikeout rate last season, and then throughout his minor league career, he was kind of sitting between 28 and 31%, depending on what level he was at. And I think that could be part of, like, he was pulled out of AAA really early last season. He logged under 15 innings in AAA last season because he filled in for Josiah Gray. So there's a little bit of upside, but overall, he's kind of like meh. To me, I think he works in deep leagues, and if you need volume, I think Mitchell Parker's fine.
All righty. New national Michael Soroka, once a top prospect, injuries derailed things, was pitching out of the bullpen with a couple starts for the White Sox last year. He had moments of looking like, okay, we might find Mike Soroka again, which kind of intrigues me in draft champions formats because his ADP is almost 530, but I'm also like not going all in at the same time. But I'm curious, like the Nats gave him a short-term deal, figure it out, but there's a lot of options. We still have a handful of guys to discuss here in this rotation. Where do you think Soroka fits in this for real life and fantasy, I guess?
Yeah, I think in real life, it really depends what the Nationals do with him, right? And I think that he's going to actually start. I think they're going to give him a shot to start, even though, after tearing his ACL, he missed he missed 2020, he missed all of 2021 and 2022. And since then, he's kind of put up like 15 sub average, subpar kind of starts between the Braves and then, the White Sox. And, he had 9 ugly starts with the White Sox. Bloated ratios hit a 0.0 K minus walk rate as a starter. But they threw him in the bullpen and he was awesome in the bullpen, And so while I think Soroka's going to start, in this rotation, and I think he's going to end up in the bullpen is what I think. And for fantasy, I'm not interested in Soroka necessarily as a starter. He gets a little bit more interesting, I think once or if he moves to the bullpen, but I think you'll see kind of a similar thing. Like Soroka has said, he signed with the Nationals basically because he was expected to have a starting role. And this is like you said, this is a really kind of murky, like the starters here are kind of like it's really murky. The rotation isn't set, but I think that they are going to roll out with Soroka to start the season, officially probably rule him out and then throw him back in the pen.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. He really hasn't been stretched out in quite some time. Gives you that flexibility, I guess. All right, I kind of grouped these last ones together, and it hurts me because I love DJ Hers. I'm a gigantic DJ Hers fan, but it feels like every move that gets made, it's just like, okay, we're gonna keep pushing you back to AAA potentially. So you got DJ Hers, you have Trevor Williams is still around, and then you have, and this is gonna be a fun one, Shinosuke
Mhm.
Agasawa.
Ogasawara,
Good
yeah.
God, I apologize. I
Yeah, that's
actually
okay.
I wrote about him last night for the news and
Mhm.
notes, and that's why I'm glad you put him on here because I'm like I actually can talk about him. I can't say his name, but I
Yeah.
can talk about him. So they have a slew of options, let's say,
Mhm.
and if Soroka's out of it, maybe two of these guys get that option. I
Mhm.
don't know, but how do you kind of see the rest of this rotation filling out for the Nets?
A lot of the reporting actually is that the two guys who are locked into this Nationals rotation is Gore and Jake Irvin.
Okay.
And that Trevor Williams, who started in 2023 and he started in 2024, is expected to be a starter as well. And Mike Soroka is expected to be a starter. So you have Hers, Ogasawara, and I think it's interesting, but Mitchell Parker is considered to be fighting for a fifth rotation spot, like
Oh,
just based off of reporting. And so I think that that's really interesting. I'm
yeah,
kind of surprised by um, the Mitchell Parker, fighting for a spot
big
since he,
time.
he gave them 151 innings last year. But they're reporting. I'm just telling you what, kind of what they're saying here. DJ Hers, I think of everyone we've talked about here, has the most upside.
Yes.
And I think that yet he has kind of issues with, he ended up with a 9.4 walk rate last year. He filled in for Trevor Williams after Trevor Williams got hurt. But this is like the high upside arm here. He had a 27.7 strikeout rate, a 12.9% swinging strike rate. He has an excellent four seamer. And actually he's got a 4 pitch arsenal that, all of his offerings have whiff rates above 25%. So he's got like a solid base to build off of as long as he can kind of get those walks under control. I'm not certain that he makes it in the rotation though, but he will have impact at some point on this team this year. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know where he's going to be initially.
Yeah.
I think with Shinosuke Ogasawara, the
Oh,
Nationals just signed him from the Chunichi. He played with the Chunichi Dragons in the Nippon League, and this is a guy I originally thought was going to be brought in as kind of bullpen depth, but
yeah.
GM Mike Rizzo has said, they brought him in, they signed him to compete for a starting job. And Rizzo had said specifically, if he does not earn that starting job out of the gates, then he will go to AAA. And then when he's ready, he will go back out into the rotation. So he's not going to be in the bullpen. They want him to be in this starting job. And I don't know a ton about Ogasawara, but the kind of what I've seen is that, he's not a strikeout guy, but he's a guy who kind of, attacks the strike zone. He pitches to contact and induces like a ton of ground balls. So that's kind of like the type of pitcher that he is. And, management wants to give him a shot to start. So that's kind of like another question mark with this rotation. And Trevor Williams, like I said, he's started the last 2 seasons for the Nationals. I actually am kind of interested in Trevor Williams. Like he's going around ADP 500. And you like kind of have to hear me out here is that he had this terrible 2023 season. But and he got plagued with, like home runs, like he couldn't keep the ball in the park. Right. And so he came in last season, he made 2 significant changes. He started throwing his 4-seamer more towards kind of the bottom of the strike zone as opposed to relying heavily on the top of the strike zone. And he also started throwing his sweeper more. He threw the sweeper 3% in 2023. That went up to 21% last season, and that ultimately became a secondary pitch. So between those 2 pitches, Williams was able to kind of keep batters off balance enough that home run problem kind of went away, and I don't know, it just worked for him. And that sweeper had a 45.9% whiff rate. So those were his like 2 primary pitches that he threw just under 60% of the time, and it worked. And unfortunately for Williams, Um, his season got cut short by injury,
Yeah.
and I think it was a flexor strain, so that's not good. But I'm like willing and interested to kind of take a shot on him um, late in drafts just to see if we're getting the 2023 Trevor Williams or 2024. It's one of those things you'll find out fairly soon in the season. And if it's the 2023 season, you can kind of churn and burn the guy. Um, and so I'm actually kind of interested in Trevor Williams as a late dart throw.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the logic just because of how well he was pitching last year. I'm with you on that one. The injury obviously was not ideal when breaking that down, but at 491, I could see. DJ Hers is around 310, which is very, very nice. So I have him in 5 of my 11 leagues. I was checking that out for
Mm-hmm.
fun. And then Shinosuke, I think I said that right that time.
I think it's
Um,
Shinosuke, but I'm not sure.
Shinosuke, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Like I'm trying to find an actual place to read how to pronounce right now as you were talking. And I
Hmm.
can't find it because I feel bad when I butcher it like that. Um, he's ADP 697. It's gone as high as 596. He's climbing. But when I did do like a just brief bit of research on him last night, looking at Baseball Reference and whatnot, he's pitched at least 140 innings in 4 straight seasons, so he's got a
Hmm.
little bit on there. We always know how in the Nippon League they basically pitch once a week, so it's different. But he was like a K to 9 guy basically his first 2 years, and it dropped to like 7.5. Last
Hmm.
year was like 6, much more
Yeah.
ground ball dependent, as you mentioned. So that's interesting. So I don't know. We'll see what he can be. 27 years old, very cheap in drafts. I love DJ Hers though.
Yeah.
And then I forgot to mention it just for fun to keep on my I love the Washington Nationals bandwagon. When we talked about Kyber Ruiz, he's on 6 of my 11 teams. So
Nice.
like we are
Nice.
all in on the East Coast action
Nice.
on the Nationals. All right. Going to the bullpen, this one, you can vent if you want. You can do whatever you want here. The fact that let Kyle Finnegan go for pennies, like it really wasn't that expensive, was a surprise to all of us.
Hmm.
Maybe he's more hurt than we think. Who knows? Was great last year, obviously. They bring in Jorge Lopez. He looks to be the guy for now, obviously, not for sure. For sure. I've heard Jose Ferrer's name mentioned and others. How do you see this bullpen playing out?
Yeah, I think that the bullpen is really ugly, right? And there's it's thin. There's not a lot of experience here. So I think because of that, I think you have to kind of assume that Jorge Lopez will be kind of the primary kind of saves earner on this team. It definitely could be a fluid situation, like you mentioned, Jose Ferrer, maybe Derek Law. But I
Oof.
think you have to go into drafts right now thinking that, it's Jorge Lopez's job, I think, to lose. I think that there's, you know, we're recording this at the end of January. I think, it's possible that the Nationals sign a veteran arm. I think they'd be interested in doing that if it's for the right price. But looking at some of the reporting, there hasn't been any language from like Mike Rizzo where it's like, okay, we brought in Jorge Lopez, but we're still looking to add some bullpen pieces. Like there's none of that. So I actually don't think that the Nationals are going to kind of bring anyone else in. So for that reason, I think that, it's Jorge Lopez. Plus, this is also a team. This is a team that's never like feels like it has to have some sort of hot shot like reliever, right? Like you
True.
said, I mean, Kyle Finnegan has kind of gone out there for the last 2 seasons. And he's like racked up 66 saves over that span.
Mhm.
So it was good both for, real life and fantasy. Um, so I think yeah, with the ADP is kind of like 480-ish now for Jorge Lopez. Uh, um I think you draft Jorge Lopez, understanding that this should be the primary saves earner, but a lot of projections right now have him, kind of around 14. So I think that you draft him for 12, 15 steals, but that a you know the know that the Nationals could just continue to roll him out, a la Kyle Finnegan,
Mhm.
and he could like rack up like a ton of saves. I'm not going to say he's going to rack up 38, like Finnegan did last season, but there's room for him to get more than kind of what's projected. And if that's the case, um, Jorge Lopez could have some sneaky value. Um, but again, there's still a lot of moving parts with this bullpen, and it's still a little bit early. Um, so I think that right now that price is fine. Um, but just kind of be open-eyed about this whole situation.
Yeah, ADP around 410. I'll gladly take 14, 15 saves at that point in a draft champions format. So I'm with you. And it's like you said, a la Kyle Finnegan, we thought he was going to be traded the last 2 years. So people were
Right.
skeptical on drafting him, and look what happened. And then they just cut him out of nowhere. So yeah, prospects. A
Mhm.
lot of them are up, as we've discussed already. A lot of them are, but you still might have a few this year.
Mhm.
So anybody that might have an impact this year that we should be keeping an eye on for fantasy?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, like you said, prospects are up. Like this is most of them are up. Um, and Washington has been fairly aggressive with their prospects. They've already invited 10 of their top 30 prospects to spring
Nice.
training. One of them is Brady House. And I think, kind of on the offensive side of this team, he's the one who could. I think you'll see and who could make the most impact. This is like Brady House is considered kind of like the third baseman of the future for this team. And he's got power, a little bit of speed. And so I think that, again, I think third base is kind of like the least settled, and the team is just kind of biding their time right now with Tenya and or Ahmed Rosario, and so we're just kind of waiting for Brady House to come up. I think you see him. I don't think he'll start the season, but you'll see him at some point. I think on the arms side of prospects, Kate Cavalli is someone who we haven't seen a lot of. He was a former top prospect, but we haven't seen a lot of because he's missed the last 2 seasons with Tommy John surgery. And this is a guy who, based off of kind of reporting here, it's unclear where he's going to go, if they're going to kind of throw him in the rotation. Um, but I think the thinking is it makes more sense to throw him in the bullpen just to kind of get his sea legs under him, see how he's doing and responding, because he's had a history of health problems. And so I think that Kate Cavalli could have an impact, and probably more so in the bullpen if that's the route that the Nationals decide to go. And I think in terms of talking about those 10 prospects that they brought up, have already invited to spring training. 4 of them are relievers, and I'm just gonna, that's Yarlin Susanna, Brad Lord, Tyler Stewart, and Marquise Grissom Jr. And I named them.
Wait.
Yep,
Marquise Grissom Jr. is a pitcher?
yep,
Oh, dad must be so proud. Okay,
yep,
sorry, continue.
yep. So I just want to throw those names out there because, like we talked about, this bullpen is really thin. And I think if, one or two of these guys is throwing hot, like out of the gate at spring training, I would not be surprised if there's an immediate move to the bullpen. I think Yarlin Susanna is the one who's like the flamethrower of the group, but he hasn't really kind of pitched above high A. Brad Lord is the one who I think has the most experience in terms of kind of double, triple A, and he's kind of fared well at that point. And so he's like a really good option. I think those are the 2 top options, but also, there's Tyler Stewart and Marquise Grissom Jr. And so just kind of keep those 4 names. I'm kind of, in spring training, keeping an eye on those arms, because that's where this team needs help. And so, and it's a fairly easy avenue I think, to get into that bullpen and make an impact this season.
Good call. For those that want to look into Brady House, ADP 669 right now, and Kate Cavalli 579. So good in-game pieces if you're in need. All right, Lauren, last question I have for you. What are your expectations for 2025?
They are sky high, Bubba. I'm so excited about this team. It's something that I kind of alluded to, at the top of the show, that, we started to get glimpses of what this team could be. And, 2025 will be this first season where you kind of see all of these guys play together from the start of this season. And so I'm excited to see, the product, and I'm fairly high. Thank you for allowing me. I've been gushing about the Nationals for the most part for the past hour. And so I think that, like I said, I'm excited. I think this is a sneaky good lineup that should not be slept on for fantasy. And, I think looking at the top of the whole lineup, I think it looks good. I'm not even going to get into it anymore, but don't sleep on this Nationals team, basically.
Yeah, it's I'm looking at their roster right now, which needs to leave you even more excited. Is CJ Abrams isn't a free agent until 29, Irvin till 30, Jacob Young till 30, Mitch Parker till 30, Tana, Wood, and Cruz not till 2031. If you want to go even deeper here, like Mackenzie Gore not till 2028, Luis Garcia 2028. My point is, you're going to have these guys for a while. It's like if you can just get like one or two more maybe high-end pitchers with
Mhm.
that offense, you actually could surprise people in the NL East, at least in
Oh,
a
yeah.
wild card. Like it's not that far out of the question, which
Right.
is I guess a testament to everyone that says don't trade your studs. Well, you guys did it very well. It doesn't work for everybody. We've seen those trades backfire. Prospects suck. You guys built it properly. So that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, before we sign out, remind everybody where they can find you, what you got coming up over at Fantrax.
Yeah, you can find me just pretty much at Fantrax, fantraxhq.com. We kind of have a draft guide that's been rolling out. We've been nice player profiles, position profiles. And like I said, I alluded to, I'll be having a kind of a cheap power, cheap speed kind of series kind of coming up and writing about kind of other draft articles to kind of prepare you all for the 2025 season. You can also find me over on Twitter over at LK Auerbach, although I'm like rarely on there. Every year you hear me say I'm going to try and be better, and I just am not. I fail at that. But you can find me there too.
Yep, always a good one. Check out her work over there because she's a senior writer at Fantrax, everybody. So go check that out. But Lauren, thanks for joining me. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for having me, Bubba.
All right, everybody. This is Bench with Bubba, episode 728, your 2025 Washington Nationals preview. Catch you all next time.